And we are live. I'm pretty sure.
I hope so.
Yeah, here we are. Hey, everybody, welcome to Talking Time with Caffeine, the only podcast where half the time I have no idea what's going on. All right, guest for today, introduce yourself.
Oh, my name's Tony Reed. I am the host of a show called How Creationism Taught Me Real Science. Possibly I'm the definition of a Poe.
That's nice. As a tradition on this channel, my guest gets to pick one topic they want to talk about.
I get to think of one time. Okay, yeah, I've seen you do that before. Well, I do want to talk about cohesion in the atheist community. I'm assuming you're an atheist too, as well, correct?
Um, in the borderline right now,
Okay.
trying to transition it.
Okay. I guess if I was going to start off talking about that, which I'm just shotgunning here, but or machine gunning here. One of the things that concerns me is that for a while there, we had a cohesive group of people that kind of, I can't say we all agreed on everything, but we actually had a good dialogue amongst each other. Seemed like that got derailed about 8 years ago, and now there's a few of us that aren't as big of channels, but we're trying to work together, and that's kind of what I wanna what I really want to see more of. I'd like to see more cohesion.
Uh, so, what do you think caused the split?
Um, I can't say exactly what caused this. I can tell you what I saw. I noticed that pardon me. I noticed that there was issue with the whole. There's a feminist, and there are people that decided instead of agreeing with each other, or at least listening to each other, they decided to go on the offensive against each other, and it started. I hate to put blame on one person, but it seemed like it started with Rebecca Watson and her account of something that happened at an atheist convention, and obviously whatever your point of view on what happened in the elevator, if nobody knows the story, is something about some things that happened to her in an elevator. Um, it turned us in against each other. It began, and then that sort of seemed to have snowballed. And I hope somebody's online that wants to correct me because I might be wrong. But it seemed like it snowballed into other things. To even up until the last election, it seemed like we had very very angry right wing atheists versus very very angry left wing atheists. And very conservative atheists versus very very liberal atheists, and it turned into a battleground for a little while. And I don't. We already have enough problems by just
Yeah.
not participating in somebody else's game. That it'd be nice for us to find that common ground. I'm sorry, am I boring you? You look like you're
No,
tired.
yeah, I don't go political very much here, but that's why I consider myself like a centralist kind of, because to me, both left and right side sometimes are just crazy people. Sometimes to me,
Yeah, that's the thing is I don't think of myself as left wing or right wing. There are some things I am left wing on. There are some things I'm very right wing on. There are some things I'm very conservative on, and some things I'm very liberal on. And what
yeah,
really surprises me is that there are people who can't tell the difference between conservative and right wing, and that can't tell the difference between left wing and liberal. And that's a shame. And what really bothers me is that people think that they're represented by Republican and Democrat. And none of those terms are interchangeable. They're all different. If
yeah,
you
yeah,
have, go ahead.
yeah. There's like there could be like liberal Republicans and conservative Democrats and vice versa.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's the reason. That's one of the main reasons my family started leaving the church to begin with, because I grew up in a Democratic household, but I went to church too. But all of a sudden, they were like, "Hey, you should vote for this guy. Republicans, way to go." I'm like, what? Huh? What? Like, if you don't vote for this guy, you're not a real Christian. I'm like, yeah, what? I'm like, they're like forcing it down, like slapping it down. I'm like, I think we should talk about politics in church. So that's when we slowly started leaving because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate that we've conflated politics and religion. Um, they are actually two separate monsters, and they are both monsters. But it's unfortunate. You asked for me to. You said bring up my whatever thing that popped into my mind. I totally
Yeah,
wasn't expecting that question. I guess. I mean, ultimately, in the end, I kind of hoped I would talk about my show, but you
we,
asked
we
you
can't we
asked
can't
me about what I.
yeah, we can
Go
too.
ahead.
That's my catchphrase. Never stop learning and enjoy the randomness. And this is randomness.
There you go. Yeah. So I'm sure if there's anybody commenting right now, they might have some negative opinions of me,
Oh,
but
oh,
I don't like the fact that it seems like we're in a society now where we it's not enough to disagree. It's not enough to have different opinions. We have to villainize each other.
yeah,
And go ahead.
that's true. Like with like like Ken Ham real fast, or Ken Holvin is like, oh, if you believe in evolution, you're not a real Christian or whatever, that kind of thing too. And that on the religious side too, like, oh, you believe in evolution, you believe in evolutionism, then
Well, that's a fun word, isn't it? Evolutionism. I use that to great extent on my show, specifically to agitate people, and I've got to say that using that word, evolutionism or evolutionist, has been something I've thrown in there less to well, partially to look like I'm like I might be a creationist at the beginning of my videos, but also because I like to see how much I can twist the knife in pissing off my fellow people who accept the the evolutionary evidence.
so speaking of your show, is all the stuff that you're doing on this show each time stuff you're learning right then yourself, or you already knew this stuff and teaching other people this?
That's about 50%. I mean, I most of the time already know where I'm going to go with it. Not every time, but there are some times, like for example, this one that I just did about the biblical kinds. I really knew very, very, very little about what a Barrowman was and any of the let's just say breakthroughs in baraminology until I actually started the actual video and started researching. And yeah, I had fun doing that video. And you might notice that sometimes at the end of those videos or these videos, I don't necessarily end with this. So absolutely, this is correct. I usually end up this is why we believe this, or this is why we accept this. And the whole thing about the Barrowmans and the idea of created kinds is that it seems like it's slowly becoming the same thing that Linnaeus did, and Linnaeus's work ended up leading to evolution anyway. So, yeah, it's like they're repeating history.
Yeah, so, that's that's yeah, that's been refined. Linnaeus taxonomy has been refined a lot. Like we have like 50 more categories now, and it's like stuff we thought was something was told us something else.
Well, yeah, it's interesting that we definitely have certain areas of the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Those, we have those classifications, and they really what they really are is markers in terms of where different groups sort of separate and are don't have any commonality. But what we're finding is obviously more and more in between those clades. There's more and more places where you can put a split. Whether now
like
there's now such things as superphylum
and
and
subphylum and subfamily and
yeah,
superfamily and grand order
yeah. I mean, even in humans,
and
we're
unnamed
vertebrates.
stuff. Yeah.
Well, we're vertebrates, but nowhere in those few classifications do you see the term vertebrata. But we are vertebrates, and we are part of that group, vertebrata, which is a subset of chordata. But it's just the thing is, Linnaeus did a great job of showing that things can be classified together, and there probably should be a better way of classifying things than his terminology, but it's just we're finding more and more subsets within each subset.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
so,
variety.
and then we're technically we're even subspecies kind of a little bit.
I've seen that too. I'm not sure how useful the term subspecies is, but I do see it. I've seen it quite a bit.
Like I think, see, I guess that's if you consider Homo sapiens or Homo sapiens sapiens, and then like the dog, like the dog. But thinking of that, you get drop a quarter in your jar. You said the K word.
Which word?
The K word.
What K word?
Anyways, speaking of, well, the dog K word, and like I think this is called.
Oh, kind. Okay, gotcha. There's another quarter. Okay.
Let's see. It's called what's it called? Canis lupus familiaris. You know that was called,
Yeah.
and then I bet Wilster just called Canis lupus. I don't think we should rename him Canis lupus aggressiveness or something like that.
What are you talking about? Pit bulls or something? What?
But wolves, regular gray wolves.
Well, by the way,
They just
I should also state that I do love pit bulls. So anybody who's watching and thinks that maybe I've just said that pit bulls are aggressive, obviously they're not aggressive. They're some of the most lovable animals ever.
is
Um,
that,
but
is
I
that the
don't
one
see.
with the sorry?
Go ahead.
Is that the one? Is that the one with the flat nose?
I wouldn't say quite flat. They're.
With those
Do
regular
do
bulldogs?
you remember Spuds McKenzie back in the 80s?
No.
Hold on. I know what to do here. Or not. I don't know. We'll see. No, the pit bull is this type of dog that it has a bad reputation because it has been people have set off the pit bull, and it's very very protective.
Is that
But
like a breeding
it's
thing? Like
just
they bred it to be aggressive, or just
I don't know how to really describe it. It's more of it's not that they bred it to be aggressive. It's just that they bred certain characteristics into it that it's fiercely loyal. So should you perhaps piss off a pit bull, it's going to come off after you. I'm actually trying to find a video or an image here to kind of get that, but or show that, but I'm having a hard time. Sorry, I got to
okay.
get better at this. I'm bad at this.
So do I. I haven't done Hangouts in a while myself. I usually do it on Skype, but lately my Skype and OBS have not been cooperating very well. I cannot like usually before I could open up a Skype window, and just like uh put on OBS. But now it's like, oh, you want to do Skype? Too bad. There's a big black screen. So if you use Skype and OBS, I gotta do display capture, and that just can't. That they can't touch the screen anymore. If I didn't have two monitors on, that'd be suck even more. But so my friend can do Hangouts. Sorry, my other friend can do, who I had running my podcast for a while for me. He had better equipment and stuff. He can do Skype and OBS, but he's been busy lately, so So I gotta do what I have to do.
Okay. Well,
Media hangouts.
this is an image of a typical pit bull. They're I would say they're a medium-sized dog, and they have a tremendous strength in their jaws. So if they decide they're going to bite down on you, you're going to feel the compression. But they're really loving dogs and very very fiercely loyal.
Looks like a terrier, kind of.
Similar to it, yeah, probably very similar to a terrier. I think I've heard somebody say that they're, and expect to be corrected on this, that they are a cross between a terrier and a bulldog.
Uh, I think a bulldog might be the one that has the flatter nose.
Definitely.
I've seen where they breed them to look like this, but they can't breathe at all. They die in 2 years because they can't breathe.
Is that true? They die in 2 years?
I don't know about 2 years, but it was on this show. It's on this little thing I saw. I don't know, it was 2 years, but they do have breathing. Apparently, they have breathing problems, and it's like from what I heard. I don't know if it's true or not, but their nose, the formed nose, make them a little cute, gives them problems.
Okay. Well, is there anything are there any burning questions you think that people would like to know about me?
Cookies in chat. Keep an eye on chat.
I'm not able to see the chat. I don't. Where would I?
We'll go to my channel, I guess.
Hold on. Let me see what questions are coming up in chat. Are people actually watching me?
Well, one person, at least one person is.
Okay, cool. Move this over.
Cookie Source, do you have any questions for this guy? Well, let's see what my questions. Uh, yeah, I discussed this with Jackson last week. Your take on it. Do you think like I talked about this in the your peer review video about how sometimes information is hard to get to. It's like you think some of the stuff we know is outdated now and it's taking forever to get here. Like when I was in school in the 80s and 90s, there was talk about how the vertebrate animals were like birds, reptiles, amphibians, fish, and mammals, and then all of a sudden, but apparently I learned that birds and reptiles were like in the one group almost together, kind of like not really separate, but same thing. And apparently people have found out decades earlier, but they just don't classify it, in books nowadays. Like I didn't know about it until like a few years ago. How
well, I mean, the thing is, a lot of the terms that we use colloquially have no scientific really application. Among those are reptile. There's reptiliomorph, but dinosaurs are not necessarily reptiles. They're archosaurs. I know that the word "saur" obviously comes from the idea of a lizard, but they're not lizards either. These terms that we use, unfortunately, are a little bit antiquated. But I mean, we try to keep some kind of cohesion, I guess. But I mean, the idea of fish doesn't really. It's not a. It's I mean, there's a law of what we call it's called a law of monophily. Again, I expect to be corrected on how to pronounce that. But the thing is, these terms that we use colloquially don't necessarily apply when actually cladistically um, identifying organisms. And birds, they're dinosauromorphs. They're definitely archosaurs. They're definitely theropods. Are they reptiles? It depends on where you draw that line.
I guess they. I think like they might be in the Euroreptile clade. That's between diapsid or something, or before diapsid or after diapsid. I forget when that clade diapsid is in there, because I thought it was right after. I thought diapsid originally. I thought diapsid was like was parallel with synapses, but apparently that's even 2 or 3 lines down.
I mean, the person to be asking about the actual classification of things would obviously be somebody like Aaron Ra, and even Jackson Wheat. You had him on, and he probably knows the classifications far better than I can. I mean, there's
Yeah,
billions, and I hate to sound like Carl Sagan, but there's billions and billions of classifications.
yeah. God, I wish I could have Aaron Raw on here, but too
I
busy for my
wouldn't.
too busy for my blood.
I don't know. He's been very. He's reached out to. He's been doing a lot of shows recently that I was like, wow, I can't believe they got him because I know he's busy, but he
Yeah.
also. I mean, I don't know if he has requirements on what the viewership is, but I've seen him do. I've seen him on channels that have fewer subscribers than you.
All right, so probably
So
not
you
as
might.
strict. Yeah, it's probably not as strict as Ken Ham had to be a doctor. A doctor to even talk to him. Oh, you're not a doctor? Well, can't talk to me.
Oh well, then you can talk to me. I mean, I technically have a doctorate degree from the Universal Life Church in divinity, so I guess I could talk to him.
That's weird. That's funny to say that. So you used to study theology and stuff. Were you like a did you used to be a creationist or you were always
I was never really a creationist. I was definitely a Christian at one point in time, and I did get my ministerial credentials, but I never did anything with it. And the thing is, as far as the evolution creation thing was concerned, I accepted evolution, but I never really had a lot of understanding. If you had asked me, 30 years ago what evolution stated, I would have given you a an answer that it resembles nothing like what the theory of evolution actually states. I would have said that chimps are our ancestors, which obviously that's not what evolution states.
yeah.
So what I can say is that I wasn't a creationist, but I did at one point in time decide, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and find out what the actual case is on either side. And it just so happens that Kent Hovind was the guy that I started watching, and I decided to go ahead and fact check him. And when I fact checked him, I found out that almost everything he said was completely wrong. And that I got to say, if there's one person who drove me away from being a creationist, it's Kent Hovind. I don't want to besmirch the guy's name, but I mean, it's not like he doesn't already do enough for himself anyway. But it's kind of funny that Ken Hovind, who's trying so hard to convert people to creationism, he's from a bygone era where you couldn't fact check people. I mean, it's so easy to fact check. Whenever I see somebody that doesn't like when my friends on Facebook and stuff like that, when they post a meme that could so easily have been fact checked with just like 30 seconds of research online, and yet they post it. It's always surprising to me, but we can do that. We can go ahead and fact check anything you decide to cite.
Yeah. I think I said the Jackson on the Jackson Wheat video, but like very repeating. I looking back to what I used to believe and stuff. I think I was an old Earth creationist back in the back in the day because I used to read books about these old, ancient times, in history and stuff. So I was hey, cool, these animals was a long time ago, like trilobites and stuff. So I'm like, so I was like, because I was like the what's it called, the Owen guy, Richard Owen guy, creation where
Yeah.
he believed in ancient, he believed in the time, Jesus time, but he still believes in creationism. But then later on, when I learned more about evolution, I switched from that to the theistic evolutionist mindset, where evolution
Mm.
happened, but God is a little lab coat manipulated things like all right, separate the continents together because I still believe that I still was in that mindset too.
So what I don't here's the I've always had a question about if you accept or sorry if you believe in old Earth creationism, why would you not accept evolution along with it?
I do not know because at the time I didn't even know about at the time I didn't even know about evolution really.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know I really know much about it because
Because I'm often wondering because I mean nothing in evolution, the theory of evolution, or even the results of applying that theory, in any way claim that there's no God or show that there's no God. So
yeah, I
why?
just
I
didn't know
mean,
about it.
yeah. Well, I'm just saying that it seems like the argument, if you're an old Earth creationist, is it's pointless because I mean, obviously you accept like David, what's his name, the guy that came up with. I'm a terrible guest. Anyway, there's a particular creationist, but he's not a creationist. He's an old Earth intelligent design advocate. I'm trying to remember his name, but he's the one that came up with the idea of irreducible complexity. And one of the things about him is he accepts evolution. He just thinks that there's an intelligence behind everything, and he thinks that certain leaps in evolutionary history uh, are best explained by some kind of divine intervention. But I mean, he still accepts evolution, and so I'm just wondering: is there a gradient there, or I mean, what's the point in even calling yourself an old Earth creationist if you accept evolution anyway?
I don't know. I don't know about other people. Like I said, I didn't really know about evolution at the time. But when I found out about it, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot more sense now. That's when I did the switch over. Also, I think in the past, my I kind of got my pastor at the time. Was thinking about that too. Like he had this theory thing, where there was the past stuff, and then the meteor was like that came and destroyed, or the asteroid that came down and destroyed the dinosaurs was Satan, and that reset the Earth, and then that 6,000 year thing happened. So like, like okay, me being a kid at the time, like okay, that makes sense to me. I'm a kid. I was a kid, and believe what people told me half the time what I read.
It's interesting you mentioned that because one of the myths I want to dispel is the idea that the asteroid that struck the Earth eliminated the dinosaurs. That's absolutely not what the evidence has indicated. That's not what scientists are saying.
Yeah, I
What they're
think
saying
was that like
is that
sorry. I think I heard were that they were already they were was that I don't know just my fake or not. What I've heard now is they were already dying anyways. That was just like the finishing
well,
blow.
not only were they dying anyways, but they lived for quite a while after that, like several million years after that. What it was, the best way to say it, and here's the one thing I got to give documentaries credit for. A lot of the documentaries have said that the asteroid strike marked the end of the dinosaurs. It's like this, we happen to see the end of the dinosaurs associated with this asteroid strike.
Well,
But the
technically,
fact of the matter is, they were dying anyway. They were going to go away, and they did go away, but it took a while afterward.
technically they didn't go away.
Well, they didn't. Yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
Because I just ate one for lunch. I just ate one for lunch today.
Okay. All right. So what else? So hey, Pokesaurus. Just you want to know who I am? I'm nobody actually. I'm always surprised that I get the attention I got, but I put together a show just for Pokesaurus because he's commented at least 3 times, and I need to be fact checked. You're absolutely right, Pokesaurus. But I do a show called How Creationism Taught Me Real Science. I definitely have. If you were to watch the first 5 minutes or first minute of my show, you would absolutely despise me. But after the first minute, if you just watch it to the end, I think you'll appreciate the idea that it's a Poe intro that kind of leads into me addressing the arguments that I present at the beginning of the video. So have fun with that, Pokesaurus. If I see you subscribe, I will definitely message you personally.
Yeah, and he's one of the few people, at least for now, actually comments on almost every comment he gets.
Good. Well, I mean, what do we see? Fact check the hell out of me, please do. I'm one of the first people to ask for sources, but I'm also one of the first people to present for sources. So and I'm also the first person to say, well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. And so I'll investigate.
Yeah, what got me kind of like down into Bible stories, especially Genesis, wasn't science itself. It was history. It was my love of history, that got me thinking. Like, wait a minute here. Something doesn't add up here. Like the flood myth. Like until even recently, like until maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, I still thought the flood thing was real. But
when they talk about the flood in the Bible, well, first of all, I don't want to defend the Bible. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm doing. But yeah, the thing is, I did a video about this, about how about flood narratives. Ancient peoples did experience, and sometimes it probably must have seemed like the world was being destroyed, and so
at least their
yeah, and the word that they use in the Bible is eretz, which means, it literally means land. It doesn't necessarily mean the entire world, because as I pointed out, the country of Israel is actually called Eretz Israel, which means that it's just the land of Israel. So when they're talking about the land being completely flooded, it's so very likely that it could possibly be a local flood. But one thing I know for sure is that ancient peoples and even modern peoples tend to exaggerate their claims. My dad will. What's that?
Game of telephone.
Well, yeah. Yes, exactly. And I use that as an example, the game of telephone. And every time we tell a story, just to keep people glued to it, we'll add a certain detail or two that makes it more interesting. And I can totally see that happening over time, to where a local flood suddenly becomes the entire world being flooded. That's not difficult to understand, or it's not difficult to imagine anyway.
Well, like I said, talking about the history thing, like back in the day, I used to watch back in the day, I used to love the History Channel, especially when it was still about history. Somewhat.
Yeah, and not aliens.
Well, not reality shows. The only history I have now is this thing we're selling now was made in 1800s. There's history fact for the day, but
really, I haven't watched the History Channel in a long time. I don't tend to watch. In fact, I haven't watched television in about 4 years. And if I watch anything a lot, it's probably YouTube.
Yeah, me too. I just watch.
Yeah.
Maybe a few. Only show I watch nowadays on TV is wrestling. So.
Yeah, and even then, for me, I stream it. But
Hulu it, Netflix it, YouTube it.
Yeah, I'd much rather watch somebody like you, or Jackson Wheat, or Aaron Raw, somebody who actually gives a damn about what they're broadcasting, than somebody who's looking for filler between advertising for pimple cream or something like that. I'm not that much into television. I do like what you do. I like what a lot of other YouTubers do. There's a few channels that I'm like, oh, okay, you're using a lot of clickbait, but I really do love YouTube. I love the people that put out content on YouTube. I enjoy that, and I'm glad to be a part of it. I'm glad I finally got off of my butt and started putting together a show about 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago, because it's been rewarding. People, interacting with me. I put out something and they'll tell me how wrong I am, or they'll tell me how right I am, or tell me how
Yeah,
yeah. So I love that. I enjoy that. It's
yeah,
much better than television.
yeah. I love the people who tell you you're wrong, but they do it in a non-trolling, nice way. Like like fact check you, like, oh, instead of saying you're an idiot and you're totally wrong about that, they're like, oh, you're wrong about this subject, and here's why. Like, oh, okay, not you know what I mean? The nice degenerates opposed to the you're stupid asshole degenerates.
Well, I actually agree with that. I enjoy that. But what I also like is because of the kind of show that I have, I love that those kind of people that will troll you and tell you how wrong you are. And then some of them are good enough to provide references to support what they're saying. And so for me, it's great to be able to have a source for the arguments that I take on in my show, because people have some uh, the strange ideas, but they do have the same sources to go towards. What's interesting is finding out how they misrepresent their own sources. But yeah, the thing about YouTube is it is an interactive environment, and television just doesn't give you that.
And that's what you do every 20 episodes or so. You go back and say, oh, this guy was right or I was wrong.
I love that. I don't know what to tell you. I know it's weird. My roommate, best friend, anyway, she's always wondering why the hell I get such a kick out of people telling me how wrong I am, and me going and looking it up and finding out that I am in fact wrong. She doesn't understand how I enjoy that, but I enjoy the hell out of that. I love being wrong when I'm wrong, and I can't wait to point out and make fun of myself for being wrong. I don't know what's wrong with me. There's just got to be something wrong
I
with
guess
me.
it's a knowledge. I guess it's like it's knowledge of you're always learning. You're not dead end on something. You're like, oh, still stuff to learn. You're still moving forward.
Well, definitely, there's always stuff to learn. There's a guy. Jackson Wheat has a friend named RJ who I never, ever, ever want to be on a panel with ever again. I don't ever want to be there, because why would I be there? The guy is so well researched. He knows his material back and front, and I I. I wish I could say I enjoy hanging out with him, but no, he knows what he's talking about, and I'll just sit back and listen.
Uh, but yeah, back to like Noah's Ark things fast. We do that a lot here. We get sidetracked in different things. What to me was about, well, like in between my two of my church runs when I was 10 to 14, I didn't go to church for like 3 4 years, and it was like, so Sunday mornings I was watching the History Channel, and they did a subject at the time called History Channel for Kids, and talking about,
Really?
yeah, it was like in the mid 90s. There's this thing on. I watched that and Dragon Ball Z. So, but
Okay.
there was this thing, and it was history for kids, and they talk about all the ancient human race, all the world, and then America thing. And there's this, how the Native Americans crossed the land 10,000 years ago. I think about it much at the time, like, okay, cool. But later on, it's like we learned about the flood and stuff, and huh, wait a minute. How could the flood have happened 4,000 years ago if American Indians were already over here 10,000 years ago? Like, I'm thinking in my brain, like, wait a minute, something doesn't add up. Like, I know the flood happened because the Bible wouldn't lie to me. So, but then I'm like, aha, the flood must have happened more than 10,000 years ago. Problem solved. My brain is like trying to you're trying to like counteract, I was
You
think.
it comes back to the question I had earlier is that you said you were an old Earth creationist. Why would that be an issue with you?
I don't know. I'm not.
Oh,
I was. I'm not anymore.
okay. All right.
So I
I
because I was I wasn't I used to be I used to be an older creationist.
it's just weird to me that you could be an old Earth creationist and bother to have any argument with evolution because obviously if you think it's possible that the Earth could be 1 billion years old or 4
Yeah,
billion or 4.7 billion, um,
but like
why
I
would
said,
you
this
have an issue with
I don't
evolution?
I don't know. That's the thing. But so once the time that I didn't know about it, once I learned about it, then I switched over to evolution. But it's like, but still, even then, the facts in my head were the facts that I learned. It's like that doesn't add up. Like in my brain, it's like how could like I said, how could the flood have happened if Indians are already over here? I'm like that. Like brain not working, but then it's like,
Uh,
but then I found out, oh, the flood didn't really happen at all. So problem solved. At least the world flood didn't happen at all. So I'm like,
yeah, and the world flood idea. It's the thing that exacerbates that is that oftentimes people present evidence for a flood, but they don't present evidence for a worldwide flood, which is they're two different things. There are floods all the time. I've been around a flood. I've actually been in Northern California in the Humboldt area where the water has gone up like 20, 30 feet above, it's gone up 20, 30 feet. And that it did seem like in some way the world would end. People in New Orleans probably know all about that, and that probably seemed like the world was ending for them. They acted irrationally, and they experienced they had an amazing experience. And I guarantee you, if you ask them any stories about what happened, you'll even then, even though they're probably it's a very serious thing, it's very close to them. I guarantee you'll hear some exaggerated stories that are not what actually would have happened. But I mean, floods happen, and it's very easy to add them into the narrative of your story and your worldview about what would have happened in the past. Um, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry.
yeah. Let's see.
Come on, Pokesaurus, give us something to work with.
uh, so, what's let's see. So who? I can't think now. This is why I like to have more than one person on here. Sometimes they'll keep the dialogue going. Sometimes it's just two people. You just like dead end it.
What you're saying is I'm a boring guest. I get it. I get it. I'm boring.
No, it
I'm
happens every
not
time.
that interesting.
It happens every time I have only two people on.
Hey, Jackson riveted me, man. I was watching Jackson's your interview with Jackson. There was not a moment of that video that I was bored. So it's got to be me.
Yeah, but so uh, yeah, I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting for that philosophy explorer thing to be published out in the real world now. This is like taking forever.
I am working with. You mean the phylogeny explorer?
Yeah.
I am actually working with that group in a very pathetic way, but I'm doing my best. And a lot of them are like, what are you going to do with us?" And I was like, "Well, the best I could do is be a voice for the group." And they're like, "Well, Why would we want you to be our voice when we have our own Ra? Well, okay, well, I get you. Okay, but there's some people that don't listen to our own Ra, and so that's where I think I could fit in. But I'm every other day they are unifying different groups. I'm watching them do it, and it's always like, here's the homework I did. You would not be you you would be definitely very surprised on the amount of work that's going on in the Phylogeny Explorer project. They are doing stuff that's far beyond my understanding, but they're getting they're zeroing in on very specific clades within clades within clades within clades within clades within clades, and I'm very impressed with the work they're doing. I wish I could see why you might be a little upset that they haven't published their work yet, and unfortunately, the fact of the matter is they should. They haven't published what they should have published yet, but the fact of the matter is they'll never be done. It
Right
will
now,
always continue.
and plus things are be changing too. Like we find out new like genetic information, like the one that I heard that they found genetic information. Oh, we're totally wrong about this thing over here. Move it over here.
Yeah. Right now, there's a small debate. I don't know how big the debate is, but it's about whether or not theropods, which includes birds, should be included in the ornithischian or in the at any rate, it looks like they may be reclassified at some point in time.
Yeah.
They might be.
Yeah, I read about
into Sora.
Yeah, I
Go
read
ahead.
about that. I read about that. I heard about on Aaron's Orange channel about how birds might actually have come from bird-hipped dinosaurs instead of the lizard-hipped dinosaurs.
It would make more sense. It would definitely simplify everything. If birds came from ornithischians instead of saurischians, because that would be the simplest solution. The problem is that just because it doesn't mean it's the right solution, and so all of that are meeting a lot of opposition, and it's justified opposition. They may be right. The people that are opposing them are also correct to oppose them. That's the thing about science that I do love, is that it's defined by bitter rivalries, and that's what it is. I mean, the idea is that you are going to argue it, and if whatever you propose, if it survives all these other people telling you you're wrong, and in the end you're convincing them, that's what you've produced. Obviously what you've put out there is predicting the evidence better, and who knows, maybe this idea of an ornithischian origin for theropods might produce some predictions that could be verified.
Yeah, kind of like the guy who proposed the plate tectonic theory didn't really get proven until after he died and stuff. People were like, "You're wrong. That's stupid." And all of a sudden, oh, he was right. He was right all along.
Well, it's not the guy, but yeah, that is definitely a version of it, especially since the expanding Earth theory was definitely gaining ground. It was much more accepted.
Yes, it's think about that. It's weird how like we have all these layers, like I used to think like is people somebody dumping dirt on the earth or something, or rocks on the earth, getting all these layers, like it's like because we have these now, like, but were they like was like back to the expanding earth thing, was was the earth smaller or something back in the day, and then got more layers each generation.
Well, those layers. I don't really have I can't speak for those people that had this idea of an expanding Earth. I think what they were trying to do is because they could see that there was seafloor spreading. They could see that happening, and they probably thought that because of that, it showed that the Earth was expanding, but the continents themselves, where we see those strata, were not really. I mean, they weren't part of that. So the idea was that the continents at one point in time were all joined together, but the Earth expanded, and it expanded in the ocean. And there's many people. There's a ton of people on YouTube that have actually taken all the continents, put them on a balloon, and
Yeah,
then
I think I saw
deflated
that.
the balloon.
I think I saw that on was it Potholder 54 channel.
Uh, I'm sure I saw it on his channel. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
absolutely certain. And by the way, if anybody doesn't know who Potholder 54 is, uh, doesn't put out a lot of material, but what he puts out is so extremely well researched that I mean it bears watching. So if you haven't subscribed to him, get off your ass. Uh,
Or or,
but
or,
uh,
or, or,
but
or stay on your ass and click a button.
yeah, something. But the point is, um, yeah, that was. I mean, you can possibly get the continents to fit together, but the thing is, because they can do that, they can take a balloon, put the continents together, and get them to fit together perfectly, which they don't really, but kind of. Um, they were able to theorize because you could see the C4 expanding that apparently the Earth is slowly but surely expanding. Now, that said, there was not at the time a mechanism available to them for how this landmass might go underground, and so subduction was what was proposed later on, and then later on confirmed through any kind of well, through a number of different methods of actual visualization. And if anybody wants anybody like, oh, say Pokesaurus wants to ask me for a reference, I'll be glad to send you a reference that you can put in the description. I did an entire episode on plate tectonics.
Yeah. Uh, so. Mm.
Is this an awkward conversation?
No, just trying to. I said, actually, I listened to a couple of questions beforehand to talk about.
Okay.
Just keep on talking about other things you want to.
Um. Well, I guess what I'll talk about now. I mean, I'll tell you what the project I'm dealing with right now is.
Okay.
This Friday, I'm going to be doing an episode on sexual reproduction, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on what I cover there, but it's an interesting thing that what I wanted to do is title the episode "Sex" and leave it at that. But apparently, the YouTube algorithms have a problem with just titling your video "Sex." And so I don't know what I'm going to do there. I might call it sexual reproduction. I don't. I just don't know what I'm going to do there. What are your thoughts on that?
It's like, I guess as long as you don't, as long as you don't, I don't, I have no idea. So is this about sexual reproduction, or like sexual selection, or sex in general, or?
Well, the argument is at one point. The argument is it's impossible for a species to evolve from being asexual to sexual, and then there's the Ray Comfort version of that argument, which is, so here you are, you're a dog,
Oh yeah.
and you need to find someone to mate with. If you don't, you're a dead dog. And so hopefully there's another guy who's there's another person, another dog that's evolved to have female genitalia. So now you got to find this female dog.
I remember that.
Yeah, especially the dead dog.
That made me laugh. But yeah, I think I read about I think one of the Richard Dawkins books where it's like how the evolution of sperm and eggs. You know how one got bigger and one got smaller and stuff. And
Yeah,
even
that's ogamy or something like that.
even like uh apparently I don't know if it's the same thing, but then Aaron talked about that in his one of the videos too about gene transfers. Kind of like I guess that's kind of like early sexual, maybe a little bit transfer your gene to another thing. But
That's the
protozoan
thing.
too.
We know that there's such a thing as horizontal gene transfer. I don't know why you can't just immediately see that horizontal gene transfer is an obvious, not quite, I can't say intermediate, but at least an allusion to sexual reproduction.
And then there's the animals that do both, like sponges. They bud and they also regular sexual too.
You know what's funny about sponges is that the classification they may be reclassified not as animals but as a another sort of classification just outside of but very closely related to animals. I've read this recently. I don't know how what I haven't read all the arguments on it, but it would be interesting to find that. And again, I love that science is constantly in and of itself evolving, and the idea of what constitutes an animal is in fact evolving.
Yeah, like I think even in the Aaron Ross series, you know, like where sponges are in the metazoan animal thing, and then everything else is like the E metazoan.
Yeah, when once we get to the metazoans, I'm all ears because I have nothing to say. All I could do is listen. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, metazones. All I could do at that point in time. I mean, I'd like to feel superior and say that I know everything that people are talking about, but I don't. I have to. I like everybody else. I'm a learner too.
Yeah.
I will say you were asking earlier how often I learn more in the video in the course of the video. Almost every video I have, not all of them, but almost every video I have done some research thinking this is where I'm going to go with the video, and then at the end find out that I'm absolutely wrong with where I was going, and that it actually fits more cohesively in the evolutionary framework simply because of this and this and this. And it's been such what my show has been such a learning experience for me. I'm glad it's been a learning experience for some people, and so I appreciate those people that joined me on the journey so far.
So, do you ever have any real creationists on your channel saying that you're wrong or anything like that, or is it
Well,
just people already, or is it people that are not creationists? Do you have actually like any Ken Holden type people on your channel ever like saying watch your
there's a
channel?
there's something wrong with me because I, as you might have noticed, I spend my time trying to make sure that I actually respond to everybody.
Yeah.
I can still do that because my channel, I get a lot of responses, I get a lot of views, but I, I do make time to respond at least once. But with the creationists, I gotta say, I gotta admit, and I feel bad about this, but I spend a lot more time addressing their arguments, and they are very venomous. I mean, they really do go after me, and they really do try to like ridicule me. And one of the things I will say, my go to comment when they comment, my go to response is, "My references are in the description. Where are yours?" And most of the time, I don't get a response after that. A lot of times after that, I get people responding, and they'll sometimes they'll cite a Newsweek article or a National Geographic article, But or oh, worst of all, a YouTube video. And I'll ask them, do you have anything peer reviewed that actually is like at least primary, like from the actual scientists that made that discovery? And I tend to get a lot of pushback there. Another thing that I notice is that this is my favorite one. When somebody when I push the peer review thing and the scientific source thing too far, they'll come back at me. Well, obviously, oh well, then why do you think your videos are scientific sources? And I have to get back to them. My show is not a scientific source. My show is a presentation of the scientific sources that I provide in my references. If you go into the description, you will always see my references. And that's because I want you to fact check me. So go ahead and fact check me. But half the time, the people that are responding to me don't really read those references. They just watch the video and decide they're butthurt and decide they want to yell at me for not agreeing with them on their worldview.
What's that saying? Don't judge a book by its cover. Actually, read the book.
Yeah, I've heard that before. In this case,
like don't just the title of the video. He's wrong. Not thinking about looking at it.
The ones I will not stomach, although I do have one rule in my comments: if a scientific assertion that we're all supposed to accept, then you need to cite your source. And if you refuse to cite a source, more than once I say, hey, can I have that source? If you refuse to cite that source, I will block you. I don't have time for people that think I should accept their assertions. I mean, I make a lot of claims in my videos, but I back them up with actual sources. If you're going to make a claim in this discussion, and I will block people for that. That's my main rule is provide sources for your at the other set of headphones on.
Yeah, I know it was getting staticky a little bit, so I decided to switch it up a little bit. Either it was me or you, or your voice was getting your voice was getting a little robotic-y. I thought maybe I had too many things on.
Well, have you ever considered the fact that I might be a cyborg?
Yeah.
I was just joking. Sorry.
You could be a cyborg, and you think it's a living thing with robot parts. So anything of a robot part on it is technically a cyborg, I guess.
Yeah. Cyborg. I actually wrote a short story. It's funny. I actually wrote a short story that was kind of let's call it a metaphor about it was about a bunch of kind of animal looking robots or androids that outlived the human race, and it was such a long time since that they were debating as to whether they actually came from whether they were actually descended from living creatures. Like they considered themselves separate from all the animals that they were living with. And one of the debates was about, well, there's either a god or we were created by animals. And the argument was, we've never seen an animal create
yeah, I've heard that theory. I heard that theory too, kind of like, but I heard that theory too, like the gods, were aliens that came down and like like they're from like other planet or other universe. Like, oh, here comes aliens, and like we're the gods. We're creating this stuff now, and I've heard that theory too.
Well, it was just a short story.
Yeah.
It wasn't a theory. It was just this sort of a parable about, you know, I'm trying to remember silicon. Yeah, that's the word I was trying to find. About a bunch of silicon based uh, automatons that are, that's probably not the right word, androids that were debating whether they actually had any kind of origin from carbon based life forms. And it was, the point was that they so obviously were created from silicon or from carbon based life forms like humans, but there was no evidence left of humanity. So they were very easily able to deny that they had any kind of natural origin. And it was just kind of a fun story that I wrote, and I put it into a short film, and or at least a script for a short film that's never been produced, but it was a fun exercise.
Yeah, I've been writing this book on and off. I won't get published. We never have. Speaking of theories and stuff, sometimes like with scientists would pick different words for things, so people can't say, "Oh, that's just a theory," so it's wrong or just a guess. Since the theory here and the theory there are two different subjects, like a theory and like a guess theory is different from a scientific theory, but they have the same name, kind of like.
Well, as you probably know, I did an episode called Only a Theory, where I discussed the fact that theories, in science anyway, are more than just an idea or a suggestion. They actually have a real world application. So you can take the theory that we all have common descent, and you can you can then determine where to look, just by assuming that, where to look for specific creature or specific fossils that display certain characteristics in the fossil record. You can take that assumption and go, well, if we accept this theory to be true, then we should be able to find this kind of creature with these kind of features when we make this observation or we go and do this excavation. And that's the thing that evolution has done. I mean, as a theory, even if it's wrong, we're able to find evidence by using assumptions. Creationism, on the other hand, even if it's absolutely 100% correct, there's absolutely no scientific use for it because anything is possible. If creation is possible, everything is possible. So, I mean, if you want to go ahead and dive in the idea that that unicorns that have magical powers exist, you can do that by being a creationist, even if creationism is 100% correct. But you can't do that if you're doing any kind of scientific research.
Yeah, I think I was in Jackson Reese video. I think of all the mythical animals that could possibly exist, I think unicorns could technically evolve. This little bump on the horse's horn, just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That's probably the most realistic animal that could probably exist by evolution standards, like
well,
the sexual selection thing.
Well, since I'm not debating a creationist right now, I use the example of a unicorn because it's the first thing that pops into our mind. What I notice is that when I talk to people that are creationists and I mention unicorns, the first thing they bring up is there's a species of rhinoceros that had a large horn. And like, well, obviously unicorns did exist. So when I decide to bring up the idea of mythical creatures, you don't believe in this, you have this amount of evidence for God and you have the same amount of evidence for this mythical creature, I tend to cite Pegasus, not not unicorns, because there's a conversation that's just going to go in a different direction. Creationists will tell you, oh yeah, well we found, okay, well when the yeah, there's no unicorns as you've seen them in popular literature, but there's the narwhal, which is technically a unicorn. I try to get back to the fact that what we're talking about is not the the morphological features. We're talking about the metaphysical things. The unicorns are magical. They actually have magical ability. Their horns actually in their legends have magical features. We don't see that in reality. So I normally try to avoid that conversation entirely and go towards Pegasus. But yeah, you guys did talk about the unicorns in that episode with Jackson Wheat, and that's one that's one of those things that I think most atheists can agree with, is that the unicorn is definitely metaphysical. Creationists, on the other hand, if I'm going to argue with them, I will not bring up unicorns. I'll bring up Pegasus.
Because that's totally different bones and wings and arms and stuff. That's
yeah, that would be a hexapod, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see it. I can see it now. A horse gets a little bump in his and sexual selection, and we're like, hey, that horse looks pretty cool looking. Come with kind of like antlers on a deer or whatever. The bigger the horn, the bigger the antlers. Like the more like the females are like, ooh, that horse is looking a little hot today. I'm gonna breed with him instead.
This is one of the things where I'm like, that's the Bible actually mentions unicorns. Then if I say, well, you don't believe in unicorns, the subject changes to, well, actually, a unicorn.
Speaking of that, I was talking about the thing about how sexual selection and natural selection can balance each other out sometimes. Like I mentioned that in the last video, where like they did that guppy experiment where they did one with no predators, and the males were like all bright and colorful and stuff, and the ones with more predators, the males were like more camouflaged to hide better. So kind of like a little balance act between the two selections.
Okay, so was that okay? Was that was more of a natural selection, or was that a sexual selection? And is there really a difference?
I mean, there's like, but I'm talking, yeah, it's like kind of like a balance. Like nature had to find a balance between being sexual selective, look better for the females, and natural selection to like actually survive in nature. There was always a balancing act there.
See, it seems to me that when it comes to natural selection, if it's well, it's definitely about females selecting males because we're males and we'll select. Well, we're not selective, but at any rate, when it comes to natural selection, it's the females that selected the stronger genotypes, for lack of a better word, that their lineage survived, where those that tended to be, let's just say, more open to whomever might be willing, tended to produce people that produce offspring that didn't tend to survive more often. And so what's happened out of that is that there's been a selection of, there's been a natural selection on both sides, where men that are a bit more capable tend to be selected more often, and women that are more selective tend to produce offspring that reproduce more often. And so I would say sexual selection sort of works right within the confines of natural selection.
Oh, then there's the third one, the artificial selection, where it's at least survive better. We just use it better.
Well, yeah, but artificial selection actually has been very efficient. The fact that we have all these breeds of dogs and all these breeds of cats, is because of artificial selection. But one of the major things about artificial selection that gives you a kind of for me, it gives me a very disturbing view of reality is that the best feature you can have as an organism is being useful to human beings, which is why cows are far more prominent than tigers and cheetahs. You know, chickens are even more prominent than cows. Horses are far more prominent than tigers or lions.
because we can use them.
We have a use for them, even if it's eating them.
I came up with an idea. If God exists, and theism was basically all evolution is artificial selection. If that's the that was my thing. If theological evolution is real, God exists, and then it's basically the whole thing is artificial selection. The whole thing's artificial selection, pretty much.
It would, I guess, it would have to be, but again, I don't. I am an atheist, but I don't have anything against people that have they want me to believe what they believe, and it's not even it's not even so much that they want me to believe it, because I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about their religious beliefs. In fact, I'll sit down, not say a word, and listen to everything you have to say. Where I have where the issue comes is the first issue comes is when you when you expect me to believe it too, and with that you're going to get some pushback. But where I actually have an outspoken opposition to you is when you want to legislate your belief into my life. Because I think Christopher Hitchens did this idea about religion is their favorite toy, and you're free to play with your toys, and you're free to bring them over or bring them out when we're at your house, but don't bring your toys to my house, and don't insist that I have to play with your toys.
Like play with my toy or else.
And by the way, my apologies already, because he was far more eloquent than I could ever be.
Yeah, very nice, yeah. But anyways, back to after studying this stuff like clades and stuff, I like.
Hold on a second. Hold on. What are you going to run, a credit card or what? What's going on here?
It sounds like I keep my hand. It's a Panera card. I sometimes keep my hands busy sometimes.
Panera bread, huh? You like Panera?
Yeah.
I wish I was more actively dating, because Panera bread has an interesting clientele.
As I study more about clades and stuff, I learn more stuff. I learned stuff I didn't know, like how there how there might not be 3 branches but only 2 branches, and how we might be inside the Archaean branch instead of the sister to it.
I agree with you. It looks like there's a lot of horizontal gene transfer between Archaean and bacterial. But in the end, when you really think about it, as human beings, are we really just eukaryotes? Because we're more than that. We're not just organisms that have a nucleus with the DNA. What we are is symbionts with bacteria.
Because we have mitochondria.
Not just mitochondria. I'm not just talking about within our cells. I'm also talking about that just as far as the cells in our bodies. It's been estimated, and it may be incorrect, but it's not too far off, probably, that there is about as much bacteria, or about as many bacterial cells in our bodies as there are human being cells. because in fact there are bacteria that break down the food that we eat. What we take in, we can't use it, but our bacteria can. They eat what we bring in, and then they defecate stuff that we can actually use. So we are symbionts. And I don't think we really just qualify as eukaryotes. I think we need to consider even more than just the eukaryote idea of what we are.
Yeah. And then I also learned by watching those videos that there was different stages I did not know about between like eukaryotes and animals. Like about this animals, there's like the fungus clade with, then there's the plant clade. You know, like how we combine
Right.
the amoebas, and then between like the whatever that the lobe finned stage, of and tetrapods. We just go from there. There's the lungfish clade, and there's all these different steps between like the Tiktaalik and Ichthyosaurus clade going up. How there's so much not diversity, but different steps, and each step is almost like its own clade. And then my main thing I learned was between amniotes and mammals, how many steps there is between those things. I thought this learned first. I was like, first I thought it was three. There's synapsids, then like therapsid and cynodelts, but there's like so much more between. So there's so much more, and between mammals and placentals too. Like how many stages are between those? I'm like wow, how many steps there are to get there.
And that brings us back to the phylogeny. I mean, the classes, or sorry, the clades that Linnaeus gave us are not quite adequate to really describe all of the different stages between different. I gotta say clades. I hate to use a different word. Taxon.
The K
but
word.
I mean, just for fun, I might. You know what? That would be funny if we did. If we just went ahead and put the word kind as one of the clades in there just for fun, and we'll put it randomly around the family level, like just either just above or just below it. That would be a really great practical joke and something a scientist would do. But it's really interesting, though. You're right. There's so much more than that. And like I brought up earlier in this episode or in this video, when you're talking about phylogeny, we go from vertebrate or from chordate to mammalia. And somewhere between chordate and mammalia is vertebrata. And that's not what's that? I don't know if that's a superphylum. I mean, I don't have it up in front of me. Somebody watching might have a. Go ahead.
Yeah, in between that, I learned there's the craniids, and then there's the nose, the nostril clade, and the craniate clade. In between those two things, vertebrate and chordate.
Well, you've done more of your homework on that particular level than I have. So I don't know what to tell you about that.
Yeah, I've been watching the 35 episode thing of like over and over again, relearning it stuff. I'm just waiting for him to be done with his Kent Hovind debate so he can go back to that series again.
Okay, so you're talking about Aaron Ra's series?
Yeah, as much as I love him laughing, at Kent Hovind, I want him to go back to that series. Like, as much as entertaining it is watching you trans Kent. He's saying the same thing over and over again. So like, almost like bored of it now. Even though it's good for a laugh here and there.
It's funny is that when I get really tired and yet I can't get to sleep, there's no voice that puts me to sleep faster than my own. But I don't want to hear my voice. I don't want to hear my videos. I don't want to hear what I say in my videos. So Aaron Ra is the second best to put me to sleep. I can at night And this is not a slam at him. This is actually a compliment. I feel very calm listening to him talk about phylogeny, taxonomy, and if there's one person in the world that's actually shown me the value of phylogeny, it's him. I mean, I did not realize how much sense the world makes by just assuming that we all have a common ancestor.
Yeah.
And so that series, you're right, it's absolutely brilliant. I have a playlist on my channel of just his videos, and I enjoy every one of them. And what are you doing there? What do you do? What are you taking there?
Oh, it's monolestic. It's medicine for my asthma.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Have medicine, 2 inhalers, and all this fun stuff I have to keep track of.
All right. Well, I don't know how old you are, but it's interesting being at my age, where when you meet somebody, a
I'm
fun
38.
conversation. You're 38. Well, at my age, I'm about 8 years older than you, almost 9. Um, what I notice is that people, when I start dating new girls at my age, one of the conversations that comes up is which prescriptions you're on. And so it's a funny thing. Oh, you're on lisinopril. Okay, I get it. So you have this problem. Oh, you're on this. It's funny how life brings it around. Okay, so that's not. I thought that was a. For some reason, I thought that was a bottle. I didn't realize that at the time there was an inhaler.
Well, actually, it was a bottle. This is an inhaler.
I should look at the screen more when I talk.
The next thing I'm the next thing I'm looking forward to is is how many clades there are between. I think it is hominins, like the split between chimps and humans, and actual humans. How many? I want to know how many clades there are between those steps.
Yeah, how many? I mean, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if we'll ever know for sure where the splits occur. We all we can do is notice what like certain novel features occur.
Yeah, that's why. That's why. That's like we talk at the same time, but that's why I wish we could have like that Mary Swatter girl lady, you know, actually could get DNA from old fossils. We could actually have these like genetic comparisons between old human fossils and stuff. We actually see the DNA between them. Like, oh, this is where they fit right here. I wish we could. I wish we could do that, but unfortunately, DNA doesn't last very long.
So let me make sure I understand what you just said. Mary Schweitzer and DNA in fossils.
Yeah, people the creationists were saying, oh, we have blood from the T-Rex, but no, we don't. But I wish we could get DNA and stuff from fossils, okay. so we could compare them. You know.
Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood. Okay. Yeah, that would be nice if we could get DNA from those fossils. We could actually find a certain relationship between dinosaurs and birds, dinosaurs and even humans. But yeah, we haven't got that. And as far as DNA in some of those old fossils, we do have fossils from Denisovans, which okay, I call them Denisovans. Some people call them Denisovans. And I don't know I don't know what the real pronunciation is. Neanderthals, we've got Neanderthal DNA, we've got human DNA, so we've been able to do some great comparisons there, and that's made a difference. Obviously, we haven't been able to get DNA from Homo erectus or Homo habilis, but you know the thing is, one of the issues I have with the creationist point of view is that they think that when we're talking about Homo habilis, Homo rudolfensis, that we're saying that they are indeed human ancestors. And we don't know that. We haven't said that. What we know is that they are consistent with what we would expect to find if we were descendant from apes. It doesn't, you know, the point is not that that they are, in fact, relatives. The point is that we predicted that animals or fossils with these particular features would appear.
Yeah, it's too bad that Neanderthals and erectus don't exist anymore, so we could do blood tests. Because I think when Neanderthals like died only like 40,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago, and erectus died out like maybe 70,000 years ago, give or take.
We'd still have creationists.
I made a joke one time. I made a joke about that one time about how if we ever went to the Mars, if we ever went to Mars, you know, in the future, you know, and the Christians there, and they're like, if we came from Earthlings, how come they're still Earthlings?
That's exactly a great parallel to the, and I'm actually going to cover that, by the way. If we came from monkeys and apes, why are there still monkeys and apes? I'm going to do a video on that this season, by the way. It's going to be about transitionals between humans and apes. But to answer that question, the reason why there are still monkeys and apes is because they are well adapted, or they were well adapted to their own environments and their own ecologies, where you and I dare say, could not survive.
Oh, well, technically, if you ask Aaron Rawl, that's because we are still monkeys.
Well, that too, but I mean,
but also like if we came from Britain, how come they're still Britain?
That too. I mean, we're yeah. There's a great discussion. I'd love to have a discussion on that as well. But yeah, I wasn't trying to. As for Aaron Raw is like, yeah, we're still monkeys, and yeah, he's one of those people that claims that we are monkeys. I mean, he's one of those people that, I think he makes a compelling argument that we are descendant from monkeys, and so therefore we are still monkeys. But
we never outgrow our ancestry idea. The monophyly thing.
But I do and it was that particular argument that he made that made me realize the value of this law of monophyly. Actually, I don't know how to pronounce the word monophyly.
I'm not good at pronouncing or spelling.
Monophyly. Jackson, where are you?
Yeah, if you're a spelling, it's funny. In spelling bees, I always listen. Words were simple. I was eliminated the first or second round. Geography bees, however, one time I made it to the finals with geography bee. I made the top 11 out of the top 10. The top 10 went on the regionals. I was number 11 in my school. So like geography bees and stuff like that, I was good at. Spelling bees, pronunciation, first round elimination.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to pronouncing a scientific term, I never have a problem with somebody for mispronouncing it. And that's because, I mean, the fact of the matter is, if they mispronounce it, it's because they read it somewhere. That means they actually read. Now, other people that just, like, for example, Ken Hovind, who is giving in the debate with him and Aaron Ra, is that he's constantly coming up with this argument. Oh, yeah, you used big words. Because he reads.
What I hate about that debate is that everything he's saying is it's a rerun. The stuff I saw on Logic's channel when you debunking. You're watching Logic's debunk of Ken Hovind. He's saying the exact same thing he did 20 years ago in his debate, in his thing with him, like the Texas pig. I'm like, wait a minute, you're saying the exact same thing 20 years later, the exact same catchphrases. I'm like, God. I can just watch the other thing and like.
Well, if there was no Ken Hovind, there would be no How Creationism Taught Me Real Science. So
yeah, so it's like,
what can I say?
I just would sometimes he would update his catchphrases a little bit, saying the same. It's like a cut and paste from one channel to another channel. Like,
so what's the setup you got there? Do you have a big screen up to the left of you like I do?
Oh, I have two monitors. One I'm watching you on, and the other one I'm checking the stream on YouTube.
Okay, I don't. All I've seen is Pokesaurus, and he's made 3
Yeah.
comments. What's going on?
No, sure. Sometimes people just watch and don't say anything a lot of times.
Do you have questions, Pokesaurus? Because I'd love to answer them.
Anybody else? Any other my other 4 people watching, or 2 people, or 3 people? I'm not sure how many people are actually. They're not us watching. So we have
Okay,
4.
well,
So we have 4 watching now, but 2 of them might be us. So.
all right. I guess I'm not quite the draw you expected I would be.
Yeah, I was just hoping more people would be in the call. I was hoping more people would be in the call. In the call itself.
I wanted somebody to be up in my face asking me questions, and nobody seems to be so far.
Yeah. Hopefully, we can do this again sometime in the future when we have more people on the show. I guess this is December time, and people were busy with Christmas stuff.
That might be true, but either way, I mean, I appreciate you having me on, and I'm sorry I'm cussing you.
Oh, hey, Havoc.
What happened?
Oh, so a new person joined the chat.
Well, hey, is that PFC Havoc?
Yep.
Ask a question, dude.
Oh, we're still on. We're still on.
Yeah, I know we are. I was just because I mean I don't know what people want to hear on your channel. I don't know what they want to hear about what we're doing, but what is the topic of the show?
Yeah.
Has he watched your show before?
What's my show, but not your show? Introduce yourself. The Havoc.
Hey, PFC Havoc. My name's Tony Reed. I have a show called How Creationism Taught Me Real Science, which if you were to watch from the beginning for about 2 minutes, you might think I'm a creationist. And by the end of it, you'll realize that the whole point is to debunk creationist claims. So that's why I'm here. But as you know, the point of this show is nobody. Apparently, there's no decided topic. Somehow, I'm supposed to come up with a topic, and we have really, really, really gone from topic to topic here.
Yeah, I'm not a structured set but I like to be. But I'm working on that.
Usually, that's all right.
Apparently, he's seen your show before.
I hope you like it. I mean, if you don't, that's fine. But one thing I will say about my show and other shows, I do a lot to promote. Well, I can't say I do a lot. Sorry, but every on those 20th episodes, when I go over all the things I got wrong, I also go out of my way to shout out people that have channels that are bringing out new information. And I really, really encourage you, if you think you can express what the science shows better than I do or anybody else can, please do it. Because as I've said many times, at least I've written many times, I've never said it, there are infinite number of people that learn a certain way. There's infinite number of people who teach a certain way, but every once in a while the right teacher meets the right student and they just totally connect. So I like to think that maybe on my show I've connected with people that actually are the right people for what I present. They actually learn from what I present, and it seems like they do. So, if you want to go ahead and express yourself, you want to go ahead and start teaching us, even if it's about, how to build model airplanes, please do it. Get out there, put some education out there.
Yeah. He studied theoretical quantum electrodynamics. So science vlogs entertain him.
Show off. I don't know what to, I mean. The thing is that there's a case where if he was to watch my show, I did one episode on what it was about. It was supposed to be about uh, this. There's a number of arguments on why we see starlight from Earth, even though it might be from 200, 300, 400,000 light years away. And so I did an episode on wave particle duality. And I would love to see his reaction to that particular episode. And I'd also love to listen to him spank me on the details that I got wrong.
Yeah. I listened to the video last week too. I keep on missing the video last week's video, but topics feet on my feet. It's like how many stars there are out there. They're not even there anymore. But it takes light so long to get to us that we don't know they're dead already. But like
that was an interesting. That was actually an interesting question you asked. I didn't really respond to it because I don't have an answer. It's something to ponder. I've thought about it many times. What we know for sure is that prior to 1987, we did not know that SN 1987A had exploded. But in 1987, we saw it. We saw a supernova explosion, and we now know where the star was, which star it was. But it exploded 163,000 years ago. So your question is extremely valid because there's a number of stars, not just are there stars, there are like many stars that we can see now that have exploded, but we just haven't gotten we just haven't gotten the memo.
Because I think we know the sun exploded. At least we know the sun exploded really fast.
We'd know in 8 minutes.
It's dark. Is it darker? Is it getting darker and hotter? And oh god.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I don't think it'll happen like that. I think probably we'll have left the planet by then or died off. What I've noticed, I did an episode on genetic entropy, and as a species, we aren't selecting anymore. I don't care who you are. There's somebody for you. I prefer that. I love that idea. I don't know if it's beneficial to our species or not, but there's somebody for everybody, and that seems to be the lack of selection seems to be causing a deterioration in our genes. Now, creationists use that as proof of genetic entropy, and I get that, but they're not. They're applying their own particular bias towards it, and then ignoring a lot of the other data that is presented. The fact of the matter is, we're not, the thing that's going to help us is that in the future, we've already started modifying genes. And there's a negative part of this, and there's a positive part of it. But the Japanese, I believe it was Japanese scientists, they saw that there was a gene, CCR5 gene. They decided to go ahead and create embryos that have this modification to the CCR5 gene, and that has given them a complete immunity to HIV and AIDS.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. It might have been from the people that survived the plague or something.
Yeah, it's a remnant from the Black Plague, but and it's mostly in Nordic cultures. But apparently, and I don't know, maybe not to Japanese, it might be Chinese. Either way, it's scientists in Southeast Asia, and I really hope I haven't offended any Japanese or Chinese people by by conflating the two. But in Southeast Asia, they have created embryos that are immune to HIV and AIDS simply by using that knowledge of the CCR5 gene.
Yeah, didn't they try to do that with that? Didn't that one scientist try to do that with that CRISPR thing, like embryos immune to that or something?
It was CRISPR. They used CRISPR.
But it was people that liked him doing that or something. Like they.
Well, there's going to be a point in time. Sorry. There's going to be a point in time we're going to have to decide: do we want human beings to be created in our
Getting a little robotic
image,
there.
or do we want them to be created in the it's with it.
Yeah.
Genetic power is a bunch of money. You can use it to better. You can use it to destroy the world if you wanted to. You could use it to just make your own life better. But with genetic power, if you can change that, then everybody that has enough money can make sure that their babies look the same way. There's a movie called Gattaca that kind of addressed that, but I think the actual implications when it finally manifests will be a little bit more extreme than what they showed in that movie. And I might be wrong, but that's what I think.
Oh, Havoc's been talking. You're reading the chat. Havoc's been talking in chat a lot.
What's that?
Havoc's been in chat a lot talking.
I see that. Yeah.
I was thinking about evolution, speciation and stuff. I was wondering about that. How long it takes someone to speciate between species, like when Neanderthals left Africa and we different species from them. But I was wondering how come, like the Native Americans were isolated on America for a long time, so were the Australians on Australia, but we can still interbreed between the. So it hasn't been that long for speciation to happen. I don't know how long it takes sometimes for it to speciation to happen.
It takes a while.
I guess it depends on how long you breed for and how long stuff happens. Like flies and stuff can speciate really fast, but humans not so fast. Because we were isolated for like 10,000 years, but we can still.
How many times have you reproduced in the last week?
None.
Yeah, I guarantee you there's a Drosophila fly out there that's reproduced at least 7 or 8 times.
Yeah, like so I guess it depends on
and their kids have at least 1 or 2 generations of that particular Drosophila fly has probably reproduced since then. So that said, yeah, we don't reproduce as fast as Drosophila, but they do show what can happen with the modifications in the genome over a generation. Now, our generations, with us, since we live so long, we gather certain mutations over our lives. We have at least 100 to 160 mutations from birth that we don't share with our parents, and then we pass those on to our offspring. But Drosophila flies are the same way, but they reproduce, weekly. So seeing that difference, it's just because they reproduce faster.
Yeah,
I wonder. I wonder what we're gonna. I wonder. I do wonder sometimes what at least 2 or 3 lines humans will be in the future. Like maybe if we go to Mars, whatever, we'll have a Martian speciation and a human and an Earthling speciation event. If you don't can't get together enough to keep gene the gene flow flowing between the 2 planets. If we will become different species on Mars or subspecies on Mars, Homo sapien Martianus.
That's great. Yeah, that probably if we do colonize Mars, yeah, that will eventually happen, especially if there's no contact between the two species. Eventually, yeah, we will speciate, but and I would say that we'll probably eventually speciate anyway, because I don't expect us to be dominant forever. I expect us to do what we're doing, which is destroy all our resources and eventually cause our own. What we're seeing now is a lack of reproductive viability. And I've seen experiments with rodents that kind of produced a group of a species that got really prominent, and then he described, I forgot the name of the scientist, but he described this one generation as the beautiful generation, where they were just peaceful, they got along, but they didn't ever have sex. They were exactly Christian rodents. And then right after that, the species died. It completely died out. And I don't see a situation where we wouldn't follow suit. We are overtaking our planet.
Yeah. I want. Like I said, I wonder. Like, who knows? Maybe in the future, mermaids are evolutionary. We'll take the water like whales did, and we'll be mermaids in the future.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if that'll happen, but let me go ahead and Havoc. You're right. Homo sapiens definitely did breed with Neanderthals. What we've known is that we don't see any mitochondrial DNA from Neanderthals in humans, so we're pretty much sure that when they reproduced, the the male versus the male human, or sorry, the male sapiens versus the female Neanderthal did not create any viable offspring, at least any that could reproduce. At the same time, the male Neanderthal taking on the female sapiens, that's where we find it, because that's the only way that the mitochondrial DNA could continue.
So it's more of a Y chromosome thing than mitochondrial thing.
I suppose so. It just shows that, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but in reality, just that pairing, it's a male Neanderthal with a female sapiens, is what contributed to our gene pool.
Yeah, I think that's probably why for at least until recently, people were debating if Neanderthals were a different species in humans or a subspecies within. Or they were a subspecies, but I think now, I think that we're more of they're different species.
Yeah, it depends on where you draw the line on what a species is. Is it a mitochondrial DNA or is it nuclear DNA? As far as nuclear DNA, they could be a subset. As far as mitochondrial DNA, they're completely separate species.
Well, I have nothing
Now,
else.
if I may though, there's a guy on both. Well, he's kind of on YouTube. He isn't a YouTuber, but he does put videos on YouTube, And one of the things that he presents is this argument that Neanderthals, from a very specifically technical standpoint, are not the same species as humans. Which really is interesting, because if you watch my show, so you know that my last episode, not this last episode, but the one before it, was about what species means. So it does depend a little bit on how you define species as well.
We're touching on my question about why we can still have sex with Native Americans and Aborigines.
You know, it's funny you mention that, because one of the things that they talk about with the extinction of Neanderthals is, like, the first assumption is that we outcompeted them, and that might have happened. That could very well have happened, but the fact that we do have some Neanderthal DNA in our genes, I'm going to give you a more modern parallel. When Europeans first came to the Americas, they met these Native Americans and they interbreeded with them. And what happened was also diseases were exchanged. These Native Americans, when they moved into America, there was no diseases that would have affected them that were available. I mean, they just weren't there, because no human beings had been there. So no viruses or bacteria had evolved to infect them. And so so they ended up developing their own diseases. But when Europeans came over, they brought these diseases that had been gestating inside our species for quite, like, several thousand years. And so 50% of the Native American population was wiped out very quickly. Now, don't get me wrong, they gave us, because I'm European descent, they gave us our own little issue, gonorrhea. But that said, we exchanged diseases. And it's very, very likely that when the early Homo sapiens entered Europe to go ahead and ended up interacting with Neanderthals, it could have been very simple that they exchanged diseases, and the diseases that had affected people in Africa, where all of the concentration of humanity was, and was able to evolve, were suddenly injected, if I may use that term, into the Neanderthal population, and the Neanderthal population could very easily have died from diseases.
Yeah, it's also like how many times we left we left Africa. Like Homo erectus left Africa, and we stayed behind, and then the Neanderthals left Africa, and we stayed behind, and then we left off and met both of them. Like, hey, we're in charge now. Get out.
Yeah. Well, also there's very recently there's that preacher, or not a preacher. What's the word? I don't know. It's one of those people that's a religious person that travels from place to place to kind of spread the word. At any rate, he decided to go out to this island just off the coast of India, and tried to preach to the natives there. And one of the things that they did, that made the story interesting, is that they immediately killed him. This is an isolated group. They've been isolated from the rest of the world for thousands of years. The fact of the matter is, they are very smart to kill anybody that comes near them, because when new cultures intermingle, there is an exchange of diseases that is devastating to both cultures, but there's most of the time one culture bears the brunt of it. And most likely this small group of people on this island will probably bear a major brunt of the diseases that don't affect us anymore.
Yeah, Yeah, it usually works both ways, but I guess sometimes it's more one side than it is the other side.
Well, yeah.
Like I've heard things about how like 90% of the Native Americans were wiped out after this. Like the ones that we hear nowadays were like only like 10% of the original Native Americans. Also,
Go
I
ahead.
was wondering, yeah, I know about how we've been also wondering how we've been bottlenecked, like how many different bottlenecks we've had in our lanes too. Like I know about the one of 70,000 years ago during that Krakatoa, whatever that was, that big explosion 70,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, big bottleneck. I mentioned that in your last video about how Noah's Ark would have been a really big bottleneck for everything.
Well, yeah, it would have had to have been. One thing that's definitely certain from, yeah, I see a lot of people argue about the mitochondrial DNA argument, but the Y chromosomal atom argument is so absolutely. There is no way if the story of Noah's Ark is true, that all of us aren't descended from just Noah, which would mean 4,400 years ago or something like that. That would be a mutation rate that's ridiculous.
Yeah, we have big, that's a very big, especially animals too. That cheetah, that I heard about that cheetah thing, how big 10,000 years ago that built bottleneck, like how and they're still suffering from that now.
Wait, what was this?
The cheetah bottleneck 10,000 years ago. How and with different, there's no variety between them anymore because they're.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard about that. I haven't really read up on it, but yeah, I did hear about how they pretty much they are pretty much all genetically identical. I didn't see really an issue with it, but yeah, that's an here's what I'll say. That's interesting.
That could be a different. That could be a video topic for your future bottleneck. That's a creationism claim or something.
Maybe I've got a lot of episodes planned for this season, and this is my last season. After this season, if I do a video on creationism and how it taught me real science, it'll be one-offs. And I don't mean if I definitely will actually.
So you only planned 100 episodes ago, and
I just figure 100 is the right place to stop. But I mean, after that, I'll continue doing one-off episodes. I just I get I get a lot of requests for a book version of my show, which I hesitate to do that because I think there's nothing more pretentious than the guy that's telling me, "Oh, I have a new novel coming out." But at the same time, it'd be kind of
sorry, you like Ken Hovind. And you can read all the stuff in my book for $9.95 or my DVD for $9.95.
Yeah, well, what I'd rather do is produce a PDF that you can have for free. That you can, I mean, basically, instead of what I'm doing right now, where I produce the argument and then you want to check the references, you'll get the references. I'd rather make the argument and then produce the source. And then continue making the argument, produce the source, and make that easily to cut and paste for people that are as uncreative as creationists, but still at least accept science.
This is too bad. One thing I do like about books is they have audible versions of them. Like I can get the audiobook version of your thing or audiobook version of your PDF and listen to it as I sleep.
Well, if you want an audio version of my show, just close your eyes.
True. Like if you're doing a book, I'll be like, I'll do the audio version. I'll talk for 20 minutes or 2 hours, like, and then this happened and that happened, and
I will say that there's a value to audiobooks. Okay, in my life, I've read the Bible cover to cover a few times. Most of the times were before I decided I wasn't an atheist. And when I finally faced the fact that I was an atheist, I listened to the Bible in an audiobook, and it was very accurate translation. I've actually read it in its Hebrew, but I finally read it or listened to it, and it was weird how when you don't accept everything as true, you can question things and go, "Wow, why would they have come up with that?" Audiobooks are valuable. They make it easier for me, especially since now I'm getting older. My vision's not as good as it was. Unfortunately, when I do my show, though, I have to read a lot because, strangely enough, scientific journals are not published in audio format. But
I wish they like.
Yeah, it'd
like
be nice. But
someone out there go peer review journals and write them down and start studying them. Or make video, or even better than audio, videos. The peer review, go YouTube, YouTube it, videos that kind of like that Stated Clearly channel does.
I really like Stated Clearly. He does state things very simplified. He does it in a way that it's not so it's not confrontational. My videos, obviously, I have a certain spin to them where it's not necessarily confrontational, but I don't really wink at the audience and let them know that, yeah, these arguments, I'm going to be destroying them in the course of the video. You have to kind of know. You have to be in on it. I get it. And so when I get people that comment on my videos, I got to say a lot of them are people that accept evolution and are angry because they only watch the intro. My show is a little different from his because he tells you immediately what he's going to be establishing. Me, on the other hand, yeah, I'm a jerk.
Well, I guess even for 2 hours, I guess. So probably wrap this up. Let's talk about.
Well, if you want to end it, it's fine. I'm good with that. It's been 2 hours, and
I'd love to talk more, but sometimes my brain is just like I don't have ideas right now. But I hope you can come on back on later in the future if you're not busy.
Anytime.
Let's talk more. Hopefully, have a bigger audience next time. Well, all right, go check his channel out. Tony Reed, right? Type that in, or how creationism taught me real science. You'll see my comments there. You see a lot of my comments on his videos. So I'll leave a link below in the description after this is published. And happy holidays, Merry Christmas. We'll probably have our season finale soon, but in the meantime, never stop learning and enjoy the randomness. See ya.
And enjoy the fact that you don't have to see my ugly face on the show.